How's it going, everybody, and welcome into the SFS channel. Today we're going to be talking about 5 league-winning sleeper candidates for the 2021 fantasy football season. Yesterday, if you checked out that video, I talked about 5 league-winning wide receivers who I don't know if they can quite be classified as sleepers because I don't know if they're being drafted late enough to fall into that category, but their upside is still so good at their relative draft positions that I think that they can still be considered league winners because of the things that they could do this fantasy season. So if you haven't checked out that video, I'll link that down in the description so you can check that out. But without further ado, let's hit that intro and get right into our sleepers. Alrighty, here we go. So if you've been around here on the channel for over a month or so now and you checked out my previous 5 league-winning fantasy football sleepers episode, Darnell Mooney was actually on the thumbnail of that episode and was, again, the first featured player in that episode, I believe. So I've tossed in a 6th name today, actually, just so that those of you who already watched that episode will have 5 new players and new names to get yourselves familiar with in today's video. But there's been new news regarding Darnell Mooney in that Chicago Bears offense that makes it too important for me to just overlook him here and to just disregard him in today's video. So basically, just a couple days back, the Chicago Bears dealt Anthony Miller, a former second-round pick, to the Houston Texans. Why is this important? Well, this is going to open up more looks, more opportunities, more volume to be had for not only Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson, but other names in the Chicago Bears offense. Maybe those looks get redistributed to Cole Kmet. Maybe we see David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen take advantage of those looks out of the backfield. But nonetheless, we know there's going to be some differences in this offense in 2021, at least in terms of how the volume of the passing game is distributed. So Darnell Mooney in season 1 as a rookie out of Tulane was very, very impressive. Only finished as wide receiver 53 last year. But let me tell you, the tape is really what tells the story of Darnell Mooney. The quarterback play was miserable for the Bears last season. And Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, they just could not get the job done on a good enough basis. And when Mooney was winning routes deep, they were not able to hit him in the hands and give him a chance to make legitimate plays with the ball in his hands. So you talk about bringing in Andy Dalton. That'll help things a little bit at the start of the season, but once Justin Fields gets in there is what I am most excited for, because Mooney is going to make some magic happen here this season. Again, no Miller, so that's going to free up some more looks for him. And Darnell already saw 98 targets in the 2020 season and caught 61 of those balls where he only cashed in 4 times. So you talk about raising up that touchdown number a little bit, raising up that target and receptions total. You're going to be looking at a greater yardage output and a player who is making a big difference for his team. Only 16% of the target share again last year, so a lot of room for growth for Darnell Mooney, who's going with the 124th overall pick, which nets about an 11th round draft pick, or at least an early 11th round draft pick in 12-team fantasy league. So moving into the second player here, the man on today's thumbnail, Treyquan Smith for the New Orleans Saints. Look, the Saints have got to throw the ball to somebody, and Michael Thomas might be out for the entire month of September based on the approximation of what we've kind of vaguely been told. Michael Thomas had surgery sometime in June, and best case scenario, let's assume that surgery happened in early June. We are given a 12 to 16 week recovery timeline for him. You're looking somewhere around that September to October marker. And if he's not ready to go week 1, 2, 3, 4, they got to throw the ball somewhere. And Alvin Kamara can't take all of the team's passing reps. I think the quarterback, and my guess would be it'll be Jameis Winston under center for the Saints this season. Him and Treyquan connected for a touchdown pass against the Buccaneers in the playoffs last year. That might just happen again this season. Well, maybe not against Tampa Bay, but those two might develop a strong connection and show that play out more as we head into this fantasy season. Treyquan's had some flashes throughout his career. I think this is year 3 or 4 now for Treyquan. He's been in the league for a bit now. My buddy Colton is a Saints fan, so I've been keeping up with him throughout the early stages of his NFL career. But nonetheless, Jameis likes to throw the ball deep. I think there'll be some more short passing game involved than we've seen in his career up to this point. But still, if you're looking for a more intermediate and deep passing game, Treyquan Smith, I think, is the best option and will be the top dog in that Saints offense as it relates to target shares. With Emmanuel Sanders departing in free agency, no more Jared Cook, there's a lot of room to be filled and a lot of target volume that needs to be soaked up by somebody here in this offense. So, look, this is such an extreme situation. I put two Saints in here. Somebody, I'm literally saying somebody has to step up. It's inarguable that the Saints are just going to be atrocious if they can't find a couple consistent names and faces to throw the football to. Sean Payton likes his tight ends down the red zone in particular, and Adam Troutman was a third-round pick at the tight end position in the 2020 draft. Again, I just talked about it. Jared Cook's out of town now. Drew Brees ain't there anymore. They need to find somebody that can score down in the receiving game. You can't just run the ball that many times. I mean, Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara is one heck of a 1-2 punch, but I'm going to stop beating a dead horse here and saying they have to throw the ball to somebody because it's probably the 10th or 11th time I've said that already. But something's got to happen here. Some piece has to move. Maybe we see one of the other Saints young receivers step up. But in my opinion, the two most likely candidates to absorb the majority of that passing workload is Adam Troutman and Treyquan Smith. Maybe you see a situation where Treyquan comes out and starts the season off so hot that you can flip him for someone else on the open trade market and get yourself a more reliable fantasy asset for when Michael Thomas steps back into this offense. Same deal for Adam Troutman here, as he's a pretty late round tight end flyer. You can snatch him up in the late 15th round, but there's going to be production for somebody to be had in that Saints offense in early September and October. Corey Davis is the next name up here for the New York Jets. Same deal. He could very well step up and take over the wide receiver one workload for the New York Football Jets. There is Jamison Crowder as a player who has formerly produced for this offense. But other than that, there's a lot of new faces. Denzel Mims had some work at the end of last season, but he had some injuries, although he was fairly efficient. I think Corey Davis is the best mold of a number one wide receiver that the Jets have on this football team right now. If I had to guess what the opening day starting lineup for the Jets would be, I would say Corey Davis and Denzel Mims are your two outside wide receivers with Elijah Moore or Jamison Crowder in the slot. It's inevitable that at some point Moore will be the starter in the slot, as Crowder took a big pay cut to stay with the team and to develop Elijah Moore for this team. But again, Corey Davis was a starting lineup play for a lot of teams last year in fantasy as a member of the Tennessee Titans, who frankly just throw the ball less than the Jets do and will continue to throw the ball less than the Jets do. Corey Davis had 11.5 fantasy points per game last season and finished as the wide receiver 31 with a lot of quality wide receiver 2 weeks. He caught 65 of 92 passes for just about 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, netting about 23% of that Titans passing workload. If he can net 23% of the Jets workload in the passing game, that'll be a much more significant number. As you just heard, he didn't crack 100 targets last year. So if he gets into 120, 130 target range, you're looking at a player that could do some damage, because as a former first-round pick, he just hasn't really been in the offense that complements his play style to the best of his ability. He could find, and the Jets just might be with Zach Wilson, a new young talented quarterback who can make plays outside of the pocket. This might be the situation where Corey Davis finally sees a late, year 5 breakout for him. So I guess you could argue that last year was his breakout season, but to even a greater extent, we could see Corey Davis flourish in a new offense here in 2021. And then the last name, well, actually the fifth name, but not actually the last name that I've got up in today's list, is T.Y. Hilton for the Indianapolis Colts. I've actually got another name that I might feature in a future Sleepers episode that is a Colts pass catcher, but T.Y. is, I think, the more likely option to have an overproductive fantasy season in regards to where we're currently drafting him. T.Y. is going at the 137th overall draft pick right now, and he's had his injury struggles. He seems to have them every year. It's usually a hamstring, an ankle, something lower body, but if he can just stay healthy for the majority of the contests this fantasy season, there's no reason why I don't think you can outproduce the numbers that he had last year. He had a couple back-to-back really strong games in 2020 before he kind of fell back off the tracks, but Phil Rivers was not passing the ball downfield. He was not stretching it, and that's what T.Y. Hilton's game is. He is a vet. He is a refined route runner, but where he excels is finding the hole in the zone coverage or even at times in man coverage deep downfield and running past people. And that's honestly how he hurts his hamstrings, is because he is a top-end speed sprinter down the field, and then you get injured doing that because you try and pull up, stop running fast, and your body tenses up and your muscles pull. So T.Y. is going to have that deep ball back in Indianapolis this season. Carson Wentz will be back there as hopefully the savior for the Indianapolis Colts franchise. If Frank Reich can fix his turnover bug and that issues, you might be looking at a very, very productive combo here between Wentz and Hilton throwing deep. There's also a chance, we've seen T.Y. the last 2 or 3 seasons now start to elevate his game down in the red zone and become a more productive target in that area of the field. So if he continues that, is in addition to having that deep ball added back into his fantasy situation this season, I think that there's a lot of growth that T.Y. Hilton could start to get back to the player he once was. And if he's even 90%, let's say, of the player he was even a couple seasons ago, I think he can have a quality wide receiver 2 or 3 season that where you're picking him at could turn into a weekly lineup play and in turn a league winning pick here. So last up in today's video, Marvin Jones, who is being crazily slept on right now. He's going as the last of the 4 wide receiver options for the Jags this season. I don't see how that's possible. Why are we picking Laviska Shenault ahead of Marvin Jones Jr., who I would argue is one of the sneakier veteran presences in the National Football League? Look what he did with, early on in his career with Cincinnati. He was a pretty darn good player there as I guess he was at times the number 3 option to Mohamed Sanu and AJ Green. I think that he might have been the number 2 over Sanu, but it was a while back. And then in Detroit, he was a very good number 1 before Kenny Golladay broke out. And then he was a very good wide receiver 2 when Golladay was on the field. Last season, Golladay was injured for the majority of the year and missing a handful of games at a time. And I think he only ended up playing like 4 or 5 games last season. But nonetheless, you see there, Marvin Jones almost cracked the top 12 of the fantasy wide receiver rankings without Matt Stafford for a couple games last year. He injured himself and missed nearly an entire contest. Again, I forget who they were playing that week, but the important thing in the detail here is that Marvin Jones walks into the Jags roster as the most veteran presence that they have in the wide receiver room. Laviska Shenault is dynamic. He can make really nice plays happen. They use him out of the backfield as a rushing threat. But he hasn't proven himself to the extent that Marvin Jones has through his NFL career to this point. We do know that DJ Chark was a Pro Bowler in 2019, but last season he was injured, saw some inconsistencies. And then you look at Travis Etienne, who is this weird running back wide receiver hybrid for Urban Meyer's offense. We don't know what we're going to get out of him. What if Trevor Lawrence just looks at Marvin Jones and connects and trusts the veteran presence in the room more than everyone else around him? I don't think that's too crazy to say. Even worst case scenario, I don't see him being lesser than the number 2 option in this offense. I think if anyone will outproduce him as a receiving threat, it'll be DJ Chark. And if you tell me wide receiver or Marvin Jones will be the wide receiver 2 for a football team again in his career, I'll take that every day of the week because he's been productive in that role in the past. So no matter what ends up happening for Jones here this season, I don't see a world where he finishes as a non-starter on this roster first and foremost. I think that either Etienne will get usage as a running back or as a wide receiver, but I don't think that you can legitimately ask him to do both at a high fantasy level. And then Laviska Shenault is the same deal. He's kind of one of those dynamic tweener players where he can be used all over the field, but will he really have an impact in fantasy lineups like a player who specializes in his sole position and has a defined role as a pass catcher or be a running threat? So I think Marvin's just got a lot more of a safer fantasy outlook than we give him credit for. He's going with the 143rd overall pick, so you're talking about in between the 12th and 13th rounds of the draft, there's a lot of value that has already went off the table, and a player this late in the draft gives us a lot of upside if he's able to do the things I think he can do. There you go. So those were 6, I guess, actually, sleeper candidates for the 2021 fantasy football season. I'll be making 1 to 2 more installments into this list, into this series, before we finish off draft season for the 2021 fantasy football year. But I wanted to get another one of these episodes out here instead of a Friday Fades episode because we were getting kind of thin for players to add on to that list. So I figured I'd wait till next week on that, and maybe we'll continue to do other style episodes and other videos with different types of content in them. So thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, head down, give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. One more thing before we head out, if you want to join the SFS community Discord and have access to join subscriber mock drafts that I post here on the channel on Mondays and Saturdays, the link to join that completely free is in the description of today and every video that I post here, so go check that out. We've got draft guide giveaways going on in there starting in August, and a lot of fun opportunities to hop in some leagues and all kinds of other stuff. So thank you all again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.